The Denver Broncos just made the right move at the right time, and I think we are perfectly situated to hand the Kansas City Chiefs their first loss on Sunday and shock the world. We're going to break all that down, NFL trade rumors. We also have a big election today, and I'm not even talking about that. I want you to all vote for the Denver Broncos by liking or subscribing to this channel, or do both if you're not already doing both. I'm Ben. I'm a diehard Denver Broncos fan. Let's dive into this trade deadline, why I think the Denver Broncos staying pat and riding to the playoffs with the team that got them this far is a great move for the Denver Broncos. So there are a lot of folks out there who had really hoped that the Broncos were going to make a splash at the trade deadline. I think on a whole, while you have instances of a player getting traded and making that final piece for a Super Bowl team, I think a lot of times you see those as moves of desperation and moves of like, you're not confident in the squad that you have. So I think this is Sean Payton's message to the team. Like, we're riding with the folks that got us here. And at the halfway point in the season, the Denver Broncos are a playoff team right now, knowing we have a lot of favorable matchups coming up here in just a little bit. We're going to break down some of those matchups and how they even got better by some of those teams trading away key assets, which makes those easier wins for us as we move forward. But I think when you look at George Payton and Sean Payton, George Payton talked about how he wants as many cracks at this thing in the draft as possible. And coming into these past couple drafts, he's talked about not being thrilled with just the amount of draft day ammunition that the Broncos had. And so at this point, we currently have 6 picks in the 6th round alone, and then we have all of the rest of our picks. And so I think we are loaded up for Sean Payton, George Payton to just use their advanced analytics. We now have David Shaw, whose entire job is going to be scouring college football to find the diamonds in the rough that fit the Sean Payton system. And you want as many cracks at it as possible. And so I think the Broncos not trying to hope that they can just steal something, a player out of free agency or trade for a player, really shows a tremendous amount of confidence in this team moving forward. On top of that, so you do have the other side of this where there's a lot of Broncos reporters and content creators who I really respect who are very disappointed in this. I was dying laughing at Sire Bettinger's tweet here where he's like, I hope you're hungry for nothing. And just us all being disappointed because I think deep down we all were like, hey, go get an awesome tight end for Bo, like, David Njoku, or get us Evan Ingram, or get us an awesome tight end, or what if we could get T. Higgins? Like, all of that was really exciting. But at the end of the day, Sean Payton and George Payton believe they will find better assets in the draft than these guys who truly we learned firsthand through the Russell Wilson deal that if a team is willing to move on from a player, they probably have a better read on what that player can be than we do, trying to go out and pick off of that. Like, I was doing victory laps around my house when the Broncos went out and got Russell Wilson, and the Seahawks must have been dying laughing. Like, you just gave us what for that guy? And so any player who a team is willing to move on from is probably not going to be the type of player who helps Bo Nix take this massive step forward in his career. And I think this is Sean Payton showing, hey, I have tremendous confidence in the squad that got me here. Also, on top of that, I think we need to be thinking that this loss against the Baltimore Ravens was truly the Broncos running into a buzzsaw. The best offense in the NFL currently, with a ton to prove, with a big game upcoming, with needing to just close that gap between the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so they really wanted to go out and win this game. And we played them a lot tougher than that game looked like. Bo Nix thought he was going into halftime just down 7 points, and the next thing you know, he gets the ball back and he's down 31-10. So I think that the Broncos are a much better team than that game, the final score of that game is actually proving out to be. On top of that, we played that game, and a lot of the scoring from Lamar Jackson, a lot of the missed plays in the secondary was truly because of Devon Key, our backup to PJ Locke. And I said that was a concern going into that game, was like, I really wanted PJ Locke to play, and it seems as if PJ Locke will return. On top of that, we talked a lot about, hey, who's another playmaker that the Broncos could get for Bo Nix? Well, we know that Josh Reynolds is also coming back. So we are going to hopefully have to rely on Lil Jordan Humphreys a lot less and truly have a wide receiver 2 in Josh Reynolds coming back this week. And so while the Broncos didn't make a splash at the trade deadline, they do have some guys who are proven guys who are coming back into the fold as it's time for us to make our playoff push. And on top of that, I have very, very high hopes for what Drew Sanders can be, and it's looking like his window is going to be opening to start practicing again, and then all of a sudden moving on from Baron Browning doesn't seem like as big of a deal because you now have another backup edge rusher in Drew Sanders that we can slowly start working in on a pitch count after his Achilles injury. So we didn't make a huge splash, but I feel like we got the guys on this team already who can help us continue this momentum. Other great news that we did get at the trade deadline was the Kansas City Chiefs they'd already lost an amazing corner in free agency, and then they also lost a starter to an Achilles or ACL injury. And so there's a lot of rumors going into this that the Kansas City Chiefs, in addition to somehow stealing Hopkins for next to nothing, we're also going to end up with Marshawn Lattimore, which would have made our matchups with them this year and their chances of a Super Bowl repeat way bigger in my mind. And luckily for the Denver Broncos, the Kansas City Chiefs did not land him. The Saints ended up shipping him into the NFC to the Washington Commanders. And I just think that's fantastic news that we didn't end up with another stud cornerback on the Chiefs, because that would have just made me absolutely furious. And so other thing is like the Baron Browning thing. A lot of people are saying like, oh, we only got a 6th-round draft pick for him, which doesn't seem like a huge haul in return, but we didn't have the cap room to pay him next year in addition to Jonathan Cooper. So truly, you got a 6th-round draft pick for him to play 8 more games this year for the Cardinals. I think that is a win for the Broncos. So as we look at up to this game and why I think the Broncos are set to shock the world by beating the Chiefs, giving them their first loss of the year, is you just look at them. They are completely decimated towards injury. They're down their starting running back. They're down multiple receivers and playing Hopkins, who's brand new to that system. I think Pat Surtain is going to have him on lock. I think we are going to see Vance Joseph get back to his roots and not be calling these weird zone coverages, because we're going to have PJ Locke back in there. And if you take a look at the last 2 times we have played the Chiefs, we always, even in that 8-year losing streak, we always played the Chiefs very close. And if you look at just last year, just this Sean Payton, Vance Joseph system, we played them first in the year on a Thursday night game, and Patrick Mahomes only got in the end zone 1 time. Russell Wilson had one of his worst games here, throwing 13 for 22 for less than 100 yards. And this was when you're like, man, Russell Wilson is just not going to work in the Sean Payton system. This was a Thursday night game in Arrowhead, which is a scheduled loss in my view. Like, that was a really stinky situation for the Broncos to be going in. And yet Patrick Mahomes only threw for 1 touchdown, and we picked him off 1 time. You look, his lead rusher in that game, Isaiah Pacheco, who runs so violently and he's a terrifying running back, he is out for this game. So I just look at this, and Travis Kelce was doing Travis Kelce things last year. Father time has kind of gotten to him. He's been on the Eras tour and eaten more than he's practicing, and he just doesn't look like the same Travis Kelce. He doesn't have a game this season yet where he has eclipsed the 100-yard mark, and I think Father time has caught up with him. I mean, this dude is older than Rob Gronkowski, and how long has Gronk been out of the league for? I think it's a really good matchup. So we kept Mahomes. He just scored one. He just had 1 trip to the end zone in this game. And then when we played him the next time to break the streak, we just see a completely different game. It was a lopsided game that I wasn't even worried about. Like, inside I was like, oh my goodness, are we actually going to be able to pull this thing off? But we dominated them at home. So we always play the Chiefs tough. And you're looking at the past 2 games, Patrick Mahomes has played against us. He's only been in the end zone 1 time. Vance Joseph is incredibly familiar with what the Kansas City Chiefs want to do, and I think the Broncos are poised and ready to shock the world by giving them their first loss of the year. And if that happens, we are talking about the playoffs as like a legit thing. Like, if you take a look at our chances of making the playoffs right now, it's that 50% range. And the team that we really have to worry about is the Cincinnati Bengals. And so we could have a 2-game lead on them even before this game even kicks off, because they have to go to Baltimore and play the Ravens. Then they have to play the Chargers, who are also battling for that playoff spot, and then the Steelers. So the Bengals have a very tough 3-game stretch ahead of them. And, playing in Dallas is never easy. The Titans have a decent defense, and so that's going to be hard. In-division matchup against the Browns, and then we get a head-to-head with them. And so I think already with the lead that we have on the Cincinnati Bengals, they have a tough schedule remaining. And I just think this is matching up perfectly for the Denver Broncos to be a playoff contender. And with this defense, nobody is going to want to face us in the playoffs, and that's something we can all believe in. Let me know in the comments, how are you feeling about the Broncos staying in pat at the trade deadline? Would you have hoped to see us do something different?